I suspect there are a decent number of gun control advocates in the United States who do wish they had the resources to do that. That, someday we can have the confiscate the guns day, and federal agents would fan out all across the entire country, knock on doors, and turn them in, and things would go. You and I and the vast majority of Americans know that would go very, very badly. That many Americans would not give up their guns easily or peacefully, and that would turn out with it would probably make Waco look like a tea party. But my suspicion is the people who are in politics. First of all, you made reference to, and I assume you talk to a great deal more ATF agents than I do. But I assume I know people who are in federal law enforcement, and you do that because you want to stop bad guys. You do that because you want to make the world a better place. You want to protect people.
Yeah.
There are bad apples, don't get me wrong, but by and large, these people get into this because they're willing to take risks. They're willing to risk their lives because they believe there is value in enforcing the laws, which means they want to go after bad guys, right? They want to go after genuinely threats to the community. The average law-abiding gun owner who owns something that that was once legal and now becomes illegal, if it's not a real threat to other people, if he's not going to run around, shooting somebody, they're not that into it. They have to. They're going to do their duty. They're not going to ignore the law, but that's not what they set out to do. Whereas I think there are a lot of people on the left side of the spectrum who are very comfortable with the mess of federal laws, rules, and regulations that we have on guns and a whole bunch of other issues, where once they've decided you're a problem, whether you're going to say you're an enemy of the state or you're simply a inconvenient person, with an old saying, you show, I think was it Stalin or something, you show me the man, I'll show you the felony, or something like that. The idea that there are so many laws all over the place that everybody breaks the law in one way or another at some point. If it's, a few miles over the speed limit, or jaywalking, or removing the mattress from the mattress tag, or whatever it is that you're breaking the law, they find you on that, and then they prosecute you for that, even if that's almost never prosecuted, and they throw that onto whatever other criminal charges they want to do. And it's a way of having 8 charges against a guy and 8 chances of convicting him, as opposed to having 2 or 3.
Right.
So I think that is a very real consequence of this, and it's not really the way our lawmaking system under our Constitution is set up. I believe that laws should be clear. I believe that having pages and pages of incomprehensible text is an impediment to self-government, and it's one of those things where if you can't understand the law, then you don't really, you may try to be a law abiding when you can break the law without knowing it. That's a real problem, right? And that's the sort of thing where I think that's, I'd like to think most judges and juries would draw a distinction between that and deliberate law breaking, but sometimes they don't always do that. So,
well, in this case, they actually have, right? So we have court rulings, injunctions that were issued right before this law went into effect, right? And much of the reason those injunctions have been issued is this is very similar to the bump stock cases, which we've seen the Fifth Circuit and Sixth Circuit block that executive action because of primarily, interestingly, not the Second Amendment, not Second Amendment claims that are having success against these orders. It's actually kind of what the principle that you're getting at there. Rule of lenity is what it's called in court, right? Where essentially, if even the ATF doesn't understand whether these things are legal or illegal, or what law they are meant to fall under, or how they're supposed to be regulated, then you can't expect the average person to have that understanding either. And so the rule of lenity says that you need to essentially, you can't charge that person criminally.
Also, right? In a case like this, where let's assume you've got your pistol brace and you're debating, should I destroy this, right? I have this. It was legal when I bought it. Now the government says it's illegal, but there's a whole bunch of lawsuits filed, and in some cases we have injunctions. You kind of figure at some point this is going to end up before the Supreme Court. And maybe you look at the Supreme Court and you like your odds. You like the way that, a 6-3 majority has been ruling lately. So do you destroy it? Because once it's destroyed, you can't undo that. You can't recreate it. And the question is, okay, do I destroy it, or do I just put it aside for a while? And let's see how this legal fight shakes out. I would never encourage someone to, deliberately violate the laws of our country. But I'm just saying that philosophy I can understand. I can understand the idea of like, this is a law for now. I don't know if this law is going to stick around for very long. And I don't know if I want to give up something that could be ruled legal, a year from now, 2 years from now, some point down the road.
Yeah. And we talked earlier about how probably some of the people who didn't register their braced guns were simply people who hadn't even heard about this whole situation. However, the people who have heard about this and are following it closely, I think it's reasonable to assume that many of them know about these lawsuits and that they're likely to succeed. And so that's probably part of why they haven't registered their guns. In fact, and we sort of know this already because the injunctions that were issued covered the named plaintiffs in the case. And this caused a little bit of confusion about what that means because some of the named plaintiffs were gun rights groups. There was Firearms Policy Coalition, Second Amendment Foundation, and Gun Owners of America all were involved in cases that have gotten injunctions issued in the Fifth Circuit. And it turned out that the judges in those cases said, yes, the members of these groups are also covered. And the groups at the very least have taken this to mean all members, including members who are joining even today after the injunctions have been filed. And so they've all gained a bunch of members from this court ruling, which means that people were paying at least some attention, at least some people, and that they didn't register, perhaps they didn't register their guns, and they want to be under the umbrella protection of these injunctions. And we've seen the Second Amendment Foundation was the only one who's given a number, but they said 20,000 people joined in the last. It's only been a week since these injunctions went into effect, and 1,000 of those were life members. GOA
great for a membership drive.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're all, telling people how FPC changed their whole structure of who counts as a member, which I imagine expanded the numbers pretty broadly. They haven't said how many. The other groups haven't said how many. GOI claims to have millions of members. They don't say exactly how many. So we don't have full insight here. But I think what's clear from the evidence is that these groups are growing because of this injunction. And it's kind of a big political blunder in that sense for Biden. You have this order along with his two other executive orders in this area that he's defended. Being blocked by the courts is unconstitutional, or likely unconstitutional at the very least. And he's driving people to gun rights groups.
Yeah, the Streisand effect. By calling attention to the issue, you end up calling attention to something you don't want. I wonder how many people. I wonder, by the way, if this has done something for the popularity of pistol braces, where the idea that if they're trying to get rid of this, I want to get my hands on it, right? The first thing is you'll get a rush to that. Question. And then, if being a member of that group might have me as part of the lawsuit and would have me effectively covered under the injunction, well, then I better get my name on that list. So, this is an interesting, unexpected benefit of that. Look, I can't figure out. Well, okay. I think it's safe to say that if the administration woke up every morning and their two goals were, I want to stop crime, involving guns, and I want to stop mass shootings, they wouldn't go about things the way they do. What they, every morning they wake up and they kind of want to I got to placate gun control activists and I got to placate people who see this issue very, very differently from the mainstream. And how do I make them happy? How do I get them off my case? How do I convince them that I'm doing a good enough job that I deserve a second term? And I think that's the animating spirit of a lot of their decision making. And as a result of it, it probably marches them into some box canyons sometimes of doing things that are counterproductive and doing things that don't get them the results that they want, but they feel like they have to fight because there's an audience out there that wants to see them fight, even if the odds of victory in courts are not particularly good.